Hello, it's been a good summer for cycling so far, what with the Tour and the Olympics, and it's got at least another 3 weeks to go because this weekend, faster, higher, stronger segues neatly into later, looser, steeper. That's not the Vuelta's official motto, but it might as well be. The last Grand Tour of the season might not have quite the prestige of its French counterpart, but neither does it have the pressure or the degree of regimentation, and the happy conspiracy of terrain and timing usually produces a much more interesting race. Few of the big names actually target the Vuelta at the beginning of the year, but most of them seem to end up here anyway, whether it's through injury, the need to redeem a disappointing season, or the chance to make a bit of history. Chris Froome falls into the last category. Since it took up its late season spot in the cycling calendar in 1995, no one has succeeded in doing the Tour Vuelta double. Although, to be honest, almost no one but Froome has actually tried, which wouldn't make it any the less remarkable should he manage to pull it off. Here he is talking to Daniel Friebe.
I really genuinely enjoy the Vuelta. I love racing here. I think it's a great race, a great atmosphere here. It's a challenging, really challenging race if you think of how many mountaintop finishes there were in the Tour de France, and you compare that to how many mountaintop finishes there are here in the Vuelta. It's I think it's 4 versus 10 or something. So I mean, it's a lot of climbing here, and it's a race that if you're motivated, you can get a good result.
And the team you took to the Tour de France was the team that you've really prepared for the Tour de France with at training camps and so on. This is a more unfamiliar outfit that you've brought to the Vuelta. Is that going to be a problem?
Not at all, not at all. I think we've got a lot of strength in depth, and hopefully we'll see that with the guys here. And certainly if riding GC doesn't work out, I'd like to think that a lot of the guys here, we could go for stage wins, there'd be a lot more to race for. And I think we've got a really competitive team again. And
I think you're of the view that Alberto Contador is the favourite. He rejected that. He said that you were just playing psychological games. If it's not Alberto Contador, who are the other favourites and who might be the surprises of the race?
Yeah, good question. I think the Vuelta always does. It is a race where if you're motivated, it's certainly easier to be up there than in the Tour. But I think it always does have surprises, the Vuelta, and I certainly think Alberto is the man to beat. I think he's got a lot still to prove this season after having crashed out of the Tour de France, and the same could be probably said for Nairo Quintana. He and Alejandro Valverde, both on Movistar, they pose quite a big threat as well. But I don't think we can really write off anyone until we get into the mountains and actually see how everyone's form is. It's a great race for younger riders to show themselves in the Vuelta and to get an opportunity. So we could see a complete surprise rider who's challenging for the win as well.
Now, of Chris Froome's main rivals, neither rode the Olympics. Nairo Quintana chose not to, preferring to head home and try to identify whatever it was that stopped him performing at the level he and everyone else had expected at the Tour de France. There, Alejandro Valverde was officially working for Quintana. Here, Movistar give them equal billing, insofar as a Colombian can have equal billing with a Spanish star on a Spanish team in Spain's national race.
¿Quién es el capo?
No, el capo
del equipo.
El que tengo a mi derecha.
¿El que tienes a tu derecha? Nairo, ¿tú eres el capo entonces?
Bueno, vamos.
¿O te da miedo coger la responsabilidad?
No, para nada, para nada.
Talking of Spanish stars, Alberto Contador's ambition to win this year's Vuelta began with the crash that scuppered his chances of either winning the Tour or going to Rio. And that might be bad news for his rivals, because the last time he crashed out in France in 2014, he was unbeatable in Spain. In fact, his presence alone is bad news for them, because he's never lost a Vuelta. 3 starts, 3 wins.
Una preparación totalmente nueva para mí. Tuve que descansar después del Tour para recuperarme de las lesiones y luego prácticamente empecé ya a competir. Clásica San Sebastián, Vuelta a Burgos. Después he hecho algún entrenamiento, pero ahora es un poco una incógnita para mí.
Last year's Vuelta was the breakthrough race for Orica's Colombian climber Esteban Chavez, with 2 stage wins, 2 spells in the leader's jersey and 5th place overall. He's since followed that up with a 2nd place in the Giro. Supporting him will be Simon Yates, who'll have been equal parts inspired and frustrated, sitting at home in July watching his brother Adam's brilliant ride in the Tour, while he served a 4-month ban for an asthma drug his team had failed to declare. Alongside Yates, no doubt, will be South Africa's Louis Meintjes, checking his chin for scars to make sure he really is racing the other twin. No best young rider jersey in the Vuelta, but those two could contest the unofficial title on the climbs, along with the leader of last year's winning team, although it's not the defending champion. Astana are led by Miguel Angel Lopez. Having claimed his first Grand Tour last year, Fabio Aru is not riding. Neither is Tom Dumoulin, so the role of dynamic Dutchman will be played by Steven Kruijswijk, who was one somersault into a snowdrift away from winning the Giro d'Italia in May. Now, we've mentioned two of the British riders in the race. There are three others. Chris Froome has Peter Kenyon for support, and there are two men making their Grand Tour debuts. Scott Thwaites of Bora Argon 18 and Caja Rural's Hugh Carthy, whose climbing ability has landed him a contract with Cannondale for next season. And as ever, climbing is the key component of this race. After two hot southern starts, this year's route looks as though the planners got their cursor stuck in the top left corner of the screen, then decided to make the best of it and pretend it was deliberate. Galicia gets 6 stages before the race heads north and east, with the sat-nav set to scenic. This year's Tour de France had 4 summit finishes. The Vuelta has 4 in a row from stages 8 to 11. And by the time it enters France to climb the Obisque, the count is up to 7. The race does belatedly get as far south as the Costa Blanca for its late lone individual time trial, then reverts to type for a 10th altitude finish in 20 stages on the penultimate day, before the relief of the flattest, shortest road stage into Madrid, where the only climb will be the one to the podium. Now, I said the final day into Madrid is the shortest, flattest road stage. Today's opener is actually shorter and flatter, but it's a team time trial, as is generally the case on the Vuelta these days. And usually there's some sort of gimmick, starting offshore on a glass-bottom pontoon or finishing in a bull ring. But after last year's fiasco, when the stage had to be neutralised because the riders refused to race on what was essentially a beach, this year the organisers have erred on the side of having a stage that will actually produce some official time gaps. In fact, as if to underline their commitment to rider safety, it starts from a health resort in the city of Orense. No major features on the route except its length really. 27.8 kilometres should be enough to generate some daylight between the favourites, depending on the strength of the teams they brought with them. And Katusha's strength is clearly not navigation. On a fully tarmacked safety-first course, they nonetheless managed to end up lost on a dirt track on their training run earlier in the week and ended up relying on some bloke out walking his dog to lead them back to the road. Out on the road, once the race got underway, there were early problems for Astana, the whole team having to sit up and wait because of a mechanical problem for Miguel Angel Lopez. We joined stage 1 with the team of his fellow Colombian Esteban Chavez about to start.
Orica Bike Exchange on the start ramp and off to commence their Vuelta a España, and this is a very, very strong team. Not just for the general classification in the form of Esteban Chavez, but for this specific discipline, and they're an incredibly well-drilled outfit. They've got a number of notable team time trial wins already under their belts on Grand Tours, and they are always a threat. And just if you look down the names of riders they have brought to the party today, it's packed with time trialing talent, and just on the names alone, you'd have to say they must be one of the favourites here to win Stage 1, David.
They are. They're one of the teams that really have, this is, like you said, it's a discipline they focus on, they train hard. The Australians already have a culture of it from the track background, team pursuit, etc. But they are the team that hold the record for the fastest ever team time trial. Actually, fastest ever bike race, 59 kilometres an hour. And that was in 2013.
Correct.
So yeah, Nice. And so that's quite recently, and a team like them, they do work at this, they do treat this, they don't just go in this as a GC. And I know Matt White, the director, very well, and although they have Chavez and Simon Yates, there's Chavez, that's the only rider they'll wait for if there's an incident.
Well, Astana now down to just, 7 men, and we saw that they drop another one, so down to 6, and closing into the final few kilometres of today's team time trial at the second of 2 intermediate split timing points. At 18.2 kilometres, they were just 9 seconds down on the time of Bora Argon 18. So actually, given how much time they lost, that's not a bad recovery there, David.
No, it's a show of strength. I mean, we saw they're obviously very disciplined, because when the incident did happen with Lopez, they regrouped, and you can see now they're splitting apart. And maybe the organisation, they did go quite deep, and perhaps now they're paying for that.
So the first team off the start ramp, and therefore the first team to cross the finishing line, and with that, of course, post the best time at the finishing line. Bora Argon 18, the pro-continental team featuring Scottthwaites. Well, they passed the line with just 5 men, so they've either had a very hard ride or they've judged it to perfection. But first team home, and therefore the best time, Bora Argon 18, the team of Scottthwaites. Out on the road with Caja Seguros, the Spanish pro-continental team, a perennial feature of any Vuelta, and a very, very aggressive lineup they have indeed. But the rider of note from a British perspective is third from the back there, and just bobbing along, you can see him, the rider with 2:03 on his back, and that is Hugh Carthy. Back on the start ramp, and this time it's with Team Giant Alpecin. Now, normally we'd be accustomed to seeing Marcel Kittel or John Degenkolb or one of the big sprinters arriving in their colours, and of course Marcel Kittel has moved on to a different team these days, and John Degenkolb is their main sprinter, but he's not at this race either. They've brought Nikias Arndt, who has a Giro d'Italia stage win in strange circumstances to his name, taking the very last sprinters stage in Turin after Giacomo Nizzolo was relegated. But they also have Warren Barguil as well, who we saw on the Tour de France, perhaps underperforming a little and wanting to make good on that particular race. Talking of which, Alberto Contador, well, as we all know, he had to abandon after that heavy fall on stage 1 his ambitions to win another Tour de France, but he's taken part in the Vuelta Espana 3 times, and he's won it 3 times. So Team Astana coming towards the finishing line and eyeing up that time of Bora Argon 18, who came in 31 minutes and 34 seconds. That's the time to beat, but Astana have had it all to do. They're looking after the last rider in that line, and there he is, the rider with 64 on the back, and he is their Colombian climber, their GC hope, Miguel Angel Lopez. That's the time of Bora Argon 18. They're well into the barriered section now, burying themselves. They can't go too deep, though. They've got to keep contact with their 5th man. They've got no more men to spare here. So it's all about conserving their effort, not putting their protected rider too deep into the red, and trying to limit their losses. What an unfortunate start it is for Team Astana, David.
It's not ideal, but you can see they've done a very good time all the same, because they did lose a significant, probably, I'd imagine 15-20 seconds with that incident with Lopez. So, you know, to just come in 1 second behind Bora Argon at this point is, I think it's a very impressive ride. They should be happy, because we're beginning to learn that the time that Bora Argon has done is very good.
And there is Chris Froome tackling the Vuelta once again after yet again winning the Tour de France. Of course, it goes without saying, a 3-time winner of the Tour de France, but this one, you sense, it's always eluded him. 2 second places, 1 fourth, in very different circumstances. It's got under his skin, this race, and he desperately wants to prove that he can win it. Not too far to go for Lampre Merida now, looking after the rider who finished in 8th place on the Tour de France, and that is the South African talent, Louis Meintjes. He is in that group of 5, I think, towards the back, so he's been protected by this effort, but look, they're losing an awful lot of time here. Already the best part of a minute down on the time of Bora Argon 18 as Lampre Merida still plough their way towards the finishing line. A full-on effort. There is Meintjes, just peeled off to the right-hand side of that train of 5 Lampre Merida riders. They stop the clock at 32.45, 1 minute and 11 seconds slower than Bora Argon 18. Not the ideal start for Louis Meintjes. Ethics Quickstep setting the best time through the first split point at 9.4 kilometres. Went 13 seconds better than FDJ, who themselves just went 1 second faster than Bora Argon 18. So Ethics Quickstep flying. 8 men still there and some big engines in there. Slightly puzzling looking team, because they've arrived at this race, David, without a real GC threat. I mean, they often don't at Grand Tours, but also without a real sprinter either.
No, I mean, they've got a quite strange team. They've got they've got Niki Terpstra and Stibar, who are 2 classics riders, if you like. And often what happens is a team like this, where they don't have a big GC rider, they'll make a decision, they'll give young riders an opportunity, and they'll take their riders, a couple of classic guys, because they use the Vuelta, and then next year it sets them up in good stead for the winter. So they almost use the Vuelta as a pre-winter training camp.
Caja Seguros bearing home the hopes of Hugh Carthy. I'm looking for the young Brit, and I can't see him actually amongst the 6 survivors of their incredibly strong outfit, but Caja Seguros are finishing with 6, is it? And I don't think Hugh Carthy is among them. The young Lancastrian, but a decent split times all the way round from Castrelo and Seguros. They're definitely losing time here in the closing few metres of this team time trial to Bora Argon 18. And although they aren't a big GC outfit, they would have been hoping to put on a show in front of Spanish support who've turned out in the sunshine here this evening. And it's respectable, not much more than that, but 6th place with some big teams still to come. They will probably tumble down the rankings before the end of the day. Looking across the line, I don't think Carthy is among them. So Alejandro Valverde for Movistar, on paper at least, or according to the number on his back, the team leader for Movistar, in a team that contains the talent of Nairo Quintana, who wears number 7, interestingly, for Movistar. 2 times in recent years, Movistar have won the opening team time trial in 2014 and 2012. Can they do it again in 2016? Well, 4th from the right, or 4th from the left as you look at it, is Scott Thwaites, who clinched himself a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games for England, and he's the sole Briton on the hot seat in the colours of Bora Argon 18. But for how much longer? Not very much longer, I don't think, because Etixx Quick-Step are finishing like a train. They've only got 5 riders left. They will have planned for that, though, and they've got 5 of the very best driving this effort from the Belgian team towards the finishing line. And perhaps they targeted this stage more than any other Etixx Quick-Step, given that they don't have an out-and-out sprinter in their midst. They don't have a real credible GC ambition either. They've got Gianluca Brambilla, but this is a favoured discipline of theirs, and they've absolutely smashed apart the time of Bora Argon 18, bumped them down into 2nd place, and they are just within 31 minutes. So they've broken through that psychological marker, and that may well be a very difficult time to beat by the end of today. So BMC, they did have 9 riders, but now they're down to 5, and it happened very quickly, David. It almost looked completely premeditated. 9 riders will take us to this point, and after then 5 of the very best will take it home.
No, exactly, because in this discipline it's the time is taken on the 5th rider. So a team like this that are so strong, they may have designated 4 riders to really apply themselves, and in the anticipation that they blow up and get dropped. Now the risk is when you get to 5 riders, we see there's TJ Van Garderen coming back, who really has been piling on the pressure. Now if they have an incident, if a puncture or a mechanical, they all have to wait.
Yeah.
Because what you'd hope for if you've got 6 riders, if one of you drops out, if it has an issue, you can just keep pushing forward. So although they're going very fast and they have stripped the team down, and they've obviously, it would be a tactic, I doubt the tactic would have been to be 5 with 4Ks to go. It puts them in a precarious situation.
I was going to say, David, precisely that happened to Team Sky in 2011 in that team time trial in Benidorm, where they were down to 5, and Wiggins and Froome on that particular occasion had to wait. I can't remember which rider it was who dropped off the back, but he had a mechanical, and that was exactly their undoing at that point. I think they lost about 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think it might have been Service Carnarvon before he was director of Sportif. I do remember that. But yeah, that's it's fine, let's say, in the final kilometre to drop down to 5, but you do put yourself, you open yourself up to the possibility of disaster, being any distance from the finish with just 5 riders.
These are the standings after 9.2 kilometres at that split point. BMC posted the best time there, but it's really tight. All the way down to Team Lotto Jumbo, who went faster than Etixx Quick-Step as well, significantly. We haven't seen much of them so far, but they're a team to keep an eye on. As Giant Alpecin, well, I don't think they're going to be, well, they're way off the pace already, losing time in big style to Orica Bike Exchange, but that's not going to matter greatly, I don't think. It's going to be an irritant for Warren Barguil, their main GC man, but I don't think that they necessarily came here with podium ambitions, more like stage ambitions for Giant Alpecin in the shape of Warren Barguil. Be interesting to see what he can do, and their sprinter Nikias Arndt, not to mention a good few others as well. So no Degenkolb and no Tom Dumoulin, of course, who was the star, or one of the big stars of last year's Vuelta. Back with Movistar, there's Alejandro Valverde with 1 on his back, 2 riders in front of him, Nairo Quintana. And their big men, Castroviejo and Erviti, are doing most of the work. The rider at the back there is their sprinter, JJ Rojas, who's also a really valuable member of the team time trial outfit. Rory Sutherland, too, will be one of the riders driving things on. And it looks like they got all their numbers there.
8 riders now, they've lost 1. Not sure who it is. But Movistar, they do, again, they're not a team, let's say, that's the same calibre of BMC Orica Bike Exchange when it comes to out-and-out victory, but they're always there. they're always in that top 5, and it's incredibly impressive. They've been doing it for years.
I mentioned Team Lotto Jumbo, and those were the timings at the second split, and actually Team Lotto Jumbo, who we simply haven't seen so far since they went down the start ramp, have posted a better time than this outfit, than Movistar, which is something of a surprise to me, and I'm sure will be something of a surprise to the watching Spanish fans as well, who will be cheering on Alejandro Valverde there. But great news for Steven Kruijswijk if they can keep that form up to the finishing line and post a decent time, and he can actually sneak a few seconds on his big rivals in GC. Ooh, Atapuma's just been gapped a little bit there, hasn't he? Just hanging on to the back wheel of Philippe Gilbert, the former world road race champion, but they've still got their 5 men there or thereabouts. I think the timing is going to be taken from Darwin Atapuma's time, but are they going to post the best time? Well, 30:43 was the time to beat from Orica Bike Exchange. I think it's going to be good enough, is it? As they drive towards the line, round that final, just a sweeping curve, lining things up. 40, 36, 37, they've got 6 seconds to play with, pushing it all the way to the line, and they will just about get there. Well, it's going to be very close. Oh, they just miss out. 30:44.2, so that's a 1/7 of a second they miss out there by. That was very close.
Very close. It goes to show how important it is, even for the 5th man, to be sprinting all the way to the line. You sit up a little bit before, because the time is taken on that 5th rider. So 10 kilometres to go for Team Sky, and they do still have a full complement, so they're looking still smooth. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, they're missing a rider, so they've already
dropped off. Yeah.
Just lost a rider. It's going to be interesting to see how they come through. They were 3rd at the first time check, and we really only need to have 4 teams really in the game at the moment for the actual stage win.
Back of the line is Pete Kenyuk, who voluntarily withdrew from participation in the Olympic road race. Still trying to find his form after breaking his collarbone at the Tour of California, which meant that he couldn't play catch-up fast enough to get himself into Olympic road race contention. I think Team Sky just went through that split point, maybe a couple of seconds down on the best time of BMC, and that was at 18.2 kilometres to go. Here we are, Team Lotto Jumbo. The helicopters picked them out. They've got 5 men, and I hope for his sake that Steven Kruijswijk is one of them. Another rider from Team Sky, the German rouleur, Christian Knees, the domestique. Veteran of so many Grand Tours, often for Chris Froome. Has been out of contention for the Tour de France team for a couple of years, but the Vuelta, that's where he makes his mark these days. He drops off now for Team Sky, and they set the equal third in the same time as Lotto Jumbo, best time over that second and final split time. Lotto Jumbo coming towards the finishing line, and Steven Kruijswijk safely cradled by his teammates. Here they come, setting a very good time, very competitive all the way around, largely invisible to the cameras of Spanish television. There's Kruijswijk just checking that he has a man behind him and urging him on, waiting for him, allowing him to use his wheel, because Kruijswijk knows that every second matters, and that 5th placed rider to cross the line will determine his GC fate at the end of the day. They crossed the line 31:04, so they are not the fastest, but that's a good little marker for Steven Kruijswijk, and I'm sure he'll be satisfied by the way his team has ridden today. Orica Bike Exchange then on the hot seat. They took over from Etixx Quickstep, and they've just held on from a big effort from BMC, but there are 3 teams still out on the road who could do damage to them, but it's beginning to look a little bit ragged for Movistar. Not far now, but they've still got 6 riders, but they're beginning to drop a couple off the back.
No, it's only getting a bit ragged, and that's often what happens at the end. You hope it's going to get ragged, to be honest with you, because that means you're pushing, and you see they're closing the gaps, but everyone at this point is completely maxed out.
Those are the split times at the second of 2 intermediate splits. BMC set the best time there with Orica Bike Exchange 6 seconds down, but they must have absolutely flown through those final few kilometres, the team from Australia, because they are the ones to beat now. Their time 30:43. The 2 riders just in danger of dropping off the back are JJ Rojas and Danny Moreno, their climber. And again, a little gap opens up, and this time Nairo Quintana has caught the wrong side of it. The rider was 7 on his back. Who's going to finish 5th, though? They are into the barriered section, and well, Quintana is caught the wrong side of a split there, and they would do well to allow him to get back on Nairo Quintana, or just allow him perhaps to lose a second or 2 to Alejandro Valverde, who is in that Well, he's leading Quintana home, actually, and closing the gap. He's the fourth rider, Valverde, and then a little gap opening up again. So it is a little bit ragged from Movistar, who are very, very well-drilled outfit, and there we go. That is the best time, and by a comfortable distance. In fact, almost 6 seconds faster than Orica Bike Exchange. So blistering tempo. And David, even if it looked a little bit disorderly and those gaps were beginning to open up, now we know why. They were flying.
Yeah, honestly, in a team time trial, you want to keep the full team together for as long as possible, and then in the last couple of 2 or 3 Ks, if you want to win it, it's going to get ragged.
Third place at both the split times, Team Sky, looking after Chris Froome well enough, and they've still got 6 riders, although looks like David Lopez is just struggling to maintain contact with the wheel in front of him now. Which
isn't surprising, to be honest. He was a late call-up. He's replaced Mikel Landa, who was potentially the team leader for this race, even in front of Chris Froome, but he has a hip injury, and he was only in the last few days pulled out, and David Lopez was the replacement. So the fact he's even there, the 6th man, when 3 other riders have been dropped, is very impressive.
Now, Movistar setting the best time, 30:37. So Team Sky, as things stand, and now they go under the Flamme Rouge. They've got a kilometre to go and less than 60 seconds to get to the finishing line. It's slightly downhill, that'll help, but still they're going to have to absolutely fly as David Lopez just drops off the pace now for good. Yeah, they're going to have to average over 60 kilometres an hour. They've got less than a minute to do that last kilometre, and but it is quite downhill, but it is technical, so that is going to scatter them a little bit, and they have to make sure they stay together and they do this perfectly technically in order to make it. Little gap opening up, and it's Chris Froome who's having to close it as well. David Lopez is the 6th rider, don't worry about him, but it's the 5th rider who counts, and Chris Froome is pacing one of the team. I think it might be Michal Goash back onto that group of 3 riders, including Pete Kenyuk and Salvatore Puccio, who are driving for the line. Look at that time of Movistar. That's the target, 30:37. 10 seconds then to take a rare team time trial win for Team Sky. They drive for the line, and it is Pete Kenyuk who's doing the driving too. Chris Froome's going to be the 5th man. His time will count, and it's very close. Team Sky take provisional 1st place, so they've done it, and I think Tinkoff are not going to be able to come close to that time, and that looks like victory on stage 1 for Team Sky and for Pete Kenyuk driving for the line here. The leader's jersey on the Vuelta a España, the red jersey, goes to the former British road race champion, and that is a major honour for him. And it's a fantastic consolation for not going to the Olympics as well. He handed off that place to Steve Cummings, and it was a wonderful gesture and the right thing to do, but not many riders, I think, would have done it, and now it's come full circle. He's got something that can replace that if that lasts to the finish, that time. Well, I think it will, don't you? I mean, they started at 4-minute intervals, of course, these teams today, so we won't know for definite until Tinkoff get to the finish line, but at none of the 2 split points has Tinkoff looked remotely like challenging the top teams, and this is going to be a big frustration for the man in 3rd wheel, surrounded by most of his teammates still, Alberto Contador. They have, to be fair, brought a strange kind of team. They have got a lot of climbing talent in the likes of Sergio Paulinho and, of course, Robert Kieselowski, Jesus Hernandez, but I don't know, they haven't performed today. It could be a damaging day for Alberto Contador, the pre-race favourite. I mean, Tinkoff wouldn't have been one of the favourites to take the stage today, and I guess in Contador's thinking he would have been assuming some sort of loss relative to, well, not necessarily relative to Chris Froome, because Team Sky's form in opening team time trials has been probably on a par with Tinkoff's. But this could be much worse than he might. No, and I think often in these situations, all the GC in this is quite a recent phenomenon, these first 18 time trials, and for the big GC riders, the only thing they target is to not lose time. It's very much as a defensive game they play. As we look at the time now, and there is the kilometre to go marker, and they've only got 5 seconds to get to the finishing line, so that's not going to happen. But that implies that Contador's losses are going to be close to a minute by the end of this race, unless they can haul something miraculous out of these final 700-800 metres. No, it will be. It's disappointing for sure for Alberto Contador. It's like you said, it's going to be about 50 seconds he's going to lose, if based on the fact that it's slightly downhill last kilometre. But they came through the last K almost at the same time that Team Sky finished on. Well, that little graphic was confirmation of the result, because it really doesn't matter what Tinkoff do now. Team Sky are unassailable in their position, and they will take the victory, and Pete Kenyuk will take the red jersey. But what of this man, Alberto Contador? You can see him just grimacing now in 3rd wheel, just moving up to 2nd place. He's still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 riders can afford to drop one more, but Contador's got to try and drive this on himself to some extent. 31, 30, well, 28, 29, they stop the clock, and his losses are going to be just over 50 seconds by the end of the day. And even though there are 20 more stages of racing, that has got him on the back foot straight away, and that is a heavy loss for the pre-race favourite Alberto Contador to sustain at the very first time of asking. On stage 1 in the team time trial, Tinkoff pull up short, and Contador has struggled over the line, losing time to all his main rivals, not just Chris Froome.
Yes, it's a 20-stage handicap race for Alberto Contador now, and he'll start it 52 seconds behind Froome, Quintana and Valverde, and 46 behind Orica's Esteban Chavez. Steven Kruijswijk is between the two. His Lotto team were 27 seconds behind the winners. Miguel Angel Lopez is 6 seconds worse off than Contador, but Astana was slowed by his mechanical trouble. Oddly, for a team time trial, the organisers had set up an individual three-man podium out on the jetty, but Sky gathered round it as best they could, with Pete Kenyock on the top step, and the man who hopes to be there in Madrid 3 weeks tomorrow to his right, having timed his effort to perfection. 0.2 of a second, Sky's winning margin over Movistar in the end.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how the legs were going to be today, so I did try and sort of take it a bit more easy earlier on, and then give some longer pulls towards the end. But I think in general the whole team, we had that mentality of also pacing it today. We knew it was going to be a 30-minute plus effort, so starting off a little bit more conservatively and then just building up right up until the last climb there.
And it was extremely close between you and Movistar. It wasn't close between you and Tinkoff, Alberto Contador. Contador was your favourite for this race. You surprised that he didn't perform better today?
Well, I mean, it is about the team. I think, obviously, as an individual, Alberto, I think, is in great form right now, and I certainly think it's a long race ahead. So in 3 weeks, a lot can happen. For us, it's a great way to start. Great confidence for the team. Let's see, there's a lot of racing ahead. It's nice to have Pete in the leader's jersey now.
And the presentation was sort of a mass desertion, with the other 8 members of Team Sky abandoning Pete Kenyock on the podium to receive the red jersey, followed by the rest of the race leaders' jerseys. It's a perfectly balanced first top 10 of the race, 5 Sky riders, followed by 5 Movistars, and having volunteered himself out of the Olympic team, Peter Kenyock finds himself first among equals, although more by chance, he insists, than design.
It was such a hard team time trial out there. We went out full gas from the start. My first turn, I was almost in the red straight away. But yeah, what a great way to start the race, and sort of, you know, I had not the best middle part of the season, so for me to come back to form and for all that hard work to it's sort of paying off now. And you know, no matter what happens in this race, it's a great way to start, and just great for the morale, really, for the team and for me. So.
I know you weren't too happy with the organisation yesterday when you did a few dry runs on the course. Was one element that was at least organised the fact that you were going to cross the line first?
No, I think we never, as a team actually, in all the team time trials I've done, we've never ever discussed who's going to cross the line first. I think it's just a case of getting to that line as quick as possible, and I think if you worry about who's going to cross it first, maybe you lose. You know, if we had worried about that in the final, seeing how close it was, maybe we would have lost it to Movistar. So I think it's almost like a lottery, depending on what position you're in, and you just got to get to that line as quick as possible. And yeah, fortunately for me, it was good to be me, and it's great to be in the jersey, but it could have quite easily been anyone else in the team.